So the question is, why did humans switch to patriarchy? And there is kind of a hint in this graphic, but this one will make it a lot clearer. The role of the horse. Did anybody out there see Barbie? Show of hands? Yeah, and you liked it, right? You thought it was a great movie? I loved it too, and I wasn't even going to go, which is ironic, because in 1959, the year the stereotype Barbie came out, I was 5 years old. And my mother handed me this stick insect of a doll with a big chest. I didn't even ask for it, and I got the stereotype Barbie in the chevron bathing suit. And within 6 months, I turned her into a weird Barbie. If any of you have seen the movie, you know what that means. I'm not proud of myself, but I was 5 and I had issues I needed to work out. So anyway, what's fascinating to me about the movie is that it really does foreground, there is a very, very immediate correlation between the domestication of the horse and patriarchy. And initially, when Ken leaves Barbie world and goes to the real world and sees that men are treated with respect and they can pretty much do anything they want, he immediately fuses the notion of seeing men on horseback and men in big trucks. That's the other thing. And when he comes back to Barbie world, contrite, and he learns his lesson, he says, to be honest, when I found out that patriarchy wasn't about horses, I lost interest anyways. Except it's all about the horses. And this latter quote just tickles me no end, because he's explaining to the other group of Kens who didn't leave, well, first I thought patriarchy was about men, and then I thought it was about horses, and then I realized it was just horses are men extenders. And they're all going, dude, yeah, that's the way it is. But in point of fact, there is so much truth in that satire, because that mattered more than anything else. What horses were. It's no exaggeration to say they were the atom bomb of their age. Before humans had domesticated horses, we were crawling across the earth on foot, dragging things on, I don't know, makeshift pallets or pulling carts if you even had figured out how to use wheels. So bringing a horse into the mix, domesticating it, not just for carrying loads or traveling great distances, but weaponizing it for warfare. That's what made the difference. Horses equal power, and power corrupts. John Steinbeck made this very complimentary quote about horsemen. A man on a horse is spiritually as well as physically bigger than a man on foot. He probably didn't recognize the downside of that statement. Bigger isn't necessarily better in this case. On the upside, when used for peaceful purposes, horses were a great improvement. The person who sat on horseback was physically elevated over everybody else, and you could see for miles and miles and miles. You could travel faster than you could on foot, you could haul far heavier loads, and you could expand your territorial range immensely, exponentially, if you had horses under your control. However, for some reason, it went to their heads, and people who were sitting on horseback started to feel that they were superior to people who didn't have horses. Intertribal raiding became the principal male occupation, which was going to do something to erode the female power base. Women generally owned possessions, owned most of the property such as there was, and divided it up. But when men started bringing wealth into the tribe by raiding, I mean, this was of benefit to the tribe, so initially females in that group would have thought this is a good idea, but at the same time didn't realize that it was weakening the power of the clan mother, because the war leader all of a sudden became way more important. Murder, pillage, and female abduction became common. It's, you know, if you're out looking for a bride and you're on horseback, it's real easy to swoop into a village, grab a woman, and ride away before anybody can follow you on foot. So again, this, horrifically enough, was the beginning of the rape culture that everybody is complaining about. Well, they should complain about it now, but everybody is talking about now. This is where the seeds were planted for it. And the thing to stress about intertribal raiding was that most of it was not done out of necessity. It was done for prestige and wealth. Men quickly discovered, men of a certain type, quickly discovered that they could elevate their status in the tribe, gain more influence, gain more wealth, if they were willing to go out there and risk their necks to steal it from somebody else. And it did elevate their status within the tribe, so they were getting a lot of social approval for doing this sort of thing. And in order to maintain that status, they had to go out and keep on conquering more and more and more, and that was the birth of toxic masculinity. If you're thinking that this is just a fanciful idea of mine, we have a historic parallel quite recently in this country. In the 1700s, the Comanche tribe moved to the plains because they knew that they could acquire horses from the Spaniards, either through theft or wild mustangs, just to build up herds. And these quotes from Britannica are kind of evocative of what the whole problem was. Before horses became available, intertribal warfare was relatively rare and few battles were deadly. Just about everybody was in the same boat. They were relatively peaceful, certainly egalitarian, gatherer-hunter societies with a slight edge given to the females, who, most of them, if not all, were matricentric cultures. After the horse, the Comanche basically created an empire on the plains. The word Comanche is derived from a Ute word meaning anyone who wants to fight me all the time. And they did. They fought everybody. Now, you could make the argument that they were embattled. There were European colonists who were making inroads into their territory, but they took on everybody, not just the US cavalry, not just settlers. They were more focused on conquering every neighboring tribe, and when they had conquered all of them, they expanded their territory outwards. The estimate at the end of the Comanche Empire was that they had enslaved 20,000 indigenous people, sold them into slavery in Mexico, and got the money to buy more horses, to buy more weapons, and on it went. So sadly, the horse is power and power corrupts, and that seems to have happened. It's very important, though, to recognize you can't exploit the horse to its maximum capability unless you live in a certain kind of topography. And the American plains were the perfect place for this. You were traveling immense distances and nothing was getting in your way. As patriarchy spread over the planet, even to this day, we find that there are pockets of matricentric culture that are on islands or mountainous regions or places where you can't fully exploit the value of the horse for riding in quickly, sweeping in, conquering, and leaving. So this is one of the reasons why the Comanche achieved such prominence. Geographically, they were positioned perfectly for it, and they were at a crisis point in their own culture because of the threat from European colonizers. So the horse itself was only domesticated in one little tiny place on this planet, and we'll get into how we know this specifically. But the area in question is the Pontic-Caspian steppe. It's this area in purple. I don't know if you can see the mouse pointer, never mind. But what it constitutes is southern Russia and a little bit of eastern Ukraine. And it's just funny how history just keeps on repeating itself. Yes, and specifically the area, very narrow area between the Volga and the Don rivers, which is up hereabouts. So southern Russia for sure, where the Yamnaya and before them the Sintashta culture, around 3500 BCE, were seriously domesticating horses. There's some evidence it could go as far back as 4200, but archaeologists aren't entirely sure because they can't tell if there's a bit wear pattern on the horses that would indicate they were ridden. So we're not real sure of anything until 3500 BCE. But what we do know is once the horse was domesticated in this region, the practices and the characteristics of the tribes who lived here began to spread into other areas.